Well, let's talk some more about King Charles's cancer diagnosis. And joining us for more on this disturbing news is journalist and broadcaster Henry Bonso. Joins us via Zoom from the United Kingdom. Thank you for joining us on the program. I'm wondering how you received the news, really, of King Charles's cancer diagnosis. And it's coming just after he underwent a procedure for an enlarged prostate.
Well, I can tell you that I was just settling down to the 6 o'clock news, and then I was also on social media, and then I saw this news break both on social media and on the main BBC News, which has the highest ratings, and I was shocked, and I thought to myself, is this linked to the enlarged prostate procedure that he was so open about and won widespread praise for? But it is very clear from the Buckingham Palace statement that it is an unrelated procedure. And I can tell you that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said this morning that he's very pleased that the doctors caught it early. So there's a lot of speculation. Some people are anxious, some are concerned, some are saying, well, he's going to get the best treatment. Remember, the big cancers worldwide, and including in the UK, are breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, and bowel cancer. But all of them have a pretty good prognosis if you get it at stage 1 or stage 2, and in some cases even stage 3.
All right then, but as it is, people are asking questions really about what the future holds, especially with this diagnosis. And it's barely a year since King Charles was actually crowned king. What does this portend for his future roles?
Well, he's a relatively fit man for his age. Remember, both his mother and his father lived to their mid and late 90s, and the line of succession is very clear. It is Prince William, who's only 41 years old, and he's got 3 children of his own. Prince Harry has not been disinherited. He is flying, as we speak, over from California to join his father, who he last saw at the coronation last May. No councillors of state have been called forward to perform duties in place of the king. He has a busy schedule. We won't be seeing him for some months, but he will behind the scenes be meeting the Prime Minister for the weekly audience, signing his red box of state papers, and he will be having conversations via Zoom when necessary, but having weekly, we think it's infusions, but we're not sure what exactly the cancer is that he has. But yeah, we don't expect to see him for some time, but there's no disturbance to the line of succession. There is no regent being imposed, and people will just have to wait and watch and see.
Indeed. And Prince Harry, we understand, is on his way to actually see his father. Do you see this as a unifying point for the royal family?
Well, in a way, if not when cancer has been diagnosed, then when? We know that the difficulties are deep, but the commentators today in the UK are saying it's not so much about a difficulty between Harry and his father. It's more between Harry and William, and perhaps his sister-in-law, Kate. But if anything can bring them together and can persuade them to, where possible, let bygones be bygones, then it's a diagnosis of cancer. People have noted that Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, Harry's wife, will not be flying over, nor will their children. They'll be staying in California. But let's wait and see what happens. People are relatively optimistic, and in time, I suspect we will learn which cancer the king actually has.
Very important. And talking about the diagnosis, it was made public just a day after the World Cancer Day. Is that a coincidence?
Yes. Well, it's difficult to know exactly, but I mean, with Buckingham Palace, very little is done by chance. And the king, we understand, was told, to his shock, last week that as a result of the screening he had and the procedure he had for the benign prostate enlargement, they discovered this unrelated condition. And Queen Camilla visited a cancer center only last week, and she was asked how the boss was doing. And she will have known by then that he had a cancer, but she's very stoical. She said he's doing fine. So yes, it could very well be linked to the fact that World Cancer Day was just last Sunday. And in fact, the UN's cancer arm released a future forecast for the rate of cancer increase around the world, both in wealthy countries and in the global south. And 3/4 of the new cancers between now and 2050 are going to be happening in countries like Nigeria, like my own country, Ghana, like elsewhere in Africa and elsewhere in the so-called developing world, as people get wealthier and live longer and begin to consume less natural and processed food, then the cancer index goes up. So this is a warning to us all. Remember, one of the great things about what the king did when his benign prostate hyperplasia was diagnosed was that he revealed it to the world. He didn't do as his mother would do or his father. They would keep these things quiet. And remember, his grandfather, the late King George VI, had lung cancer and nobody knew. In fact, doctors didn't even tell him. But this king said, look, I want people to know to help them. And we had an increase of 1,000% of men coming forward to ask about benign prostate hyperplasia. I even had mine checked last week. I'm being candid with you because we, as African men, have the highest rate of prostate cancer in the world. So you have to get ahead of these things. And 1,000 new cancer diagnoses per day are revealed, are detected here in the UK. So it is very important what the king did. And we would hope that in other countries around the world, when the rich and famous, the well-known leaders like President Tinubu, if they have a condition, they let people know, because to be forewarned is to be forearmed. And you have a far better chance of a good diagnosis, a good prognosis, if you get ahead of it early.
And the transparency helps the citizens to actually know what the situation is. But then reactions are already, greeting this announcement. And we know that President Joe Biden has said he would, plan to pay the king a visit pretty soon. How do you see it pan out?
Well, the President of the United States is always welcome here. The United States is, of course, the closest ally of the UK. But this king is getting well-wishers, contacting the palace and putting out statements from around the world. The Prime Minister of Australia, the French President. We have people who are in regular contact because of intelligence sharing and close political relations. And remember, this king has only been in office, reigning, since September in 2022. It was a role for which he had waited 3/4 of a century to fulfill, and he's already visited Germany for a state visit, France for a state visit, and Kenya for a state visit, where he acknowledged the pain and the injustice of colonialism and slavery. And he's also welcomed South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to Buckingham Palace quite recently, a very successful state visit. So he's a busy man. He receives his state papers regularly. He goes out and does the royal round, doing the investitures, giving people knighthoods, and members of the British Empire, etc. All of these gongs, as we call them. So for a 75-year-old man, he's very clear. He wants to be monarch, and he said this, as long as God gives him time. He's 75 years old. If he lives as long as his mother, he will live another 20 or so years. If he lives as long as his father, he has another 24 years. But who knows? It's in the hands of God.
All right, then. And we know he was, meant to tour Australia later in the year, but all of that might just be on hold for now. Thank you very much, Henry Bonso, journalist and broadcaster, for talking to us on World Now.
Thank you very much indeed.